Have you ever laid awake at night, replaying conversations, overanalyzing choices and trying to predict every possible outcome, only to feel more stuck than before? We live in an age of hyperthinking. Our minds race to solve problems that haven't happened yet, trying to plan life like a chess game. But what if the very act of overthinking is what's blocking your clarity? There's a quote often echoed in spiritual circles: "When you stop overthinking, everything will fall into place." But what does that really mean, and is it actually true? In this episode, we'll explore that idea through the lens of Alan Watts, a British philosopher who translated Eastern wisdom into powerful insights for the Western mind. Watts believed that most of our suffering comes not from life itself, but from our compulsive need to control and analyze it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why letting go isn't giving up. It's stepping out of your own way. And you might just discover that peace, clarity, and alignment don't come from thinking harder, but from thinking less. Let's dive into the philosophy of letting go, and why everything starts falling into place when you stop forcing it. Alan Watts was one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, not because he gave us step-by-step formulas, but because he challenged us to see life differently. Born in England in 1915, Watts was a philosopher, writer, and speaker who became best known for interpreting Eastern philosophies like Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism for a Western audience. Unlike many academics, Watts had a uniquely poetic and conversational way of communicating deep truths. He didn't preach, he invited people to see. In the 1950s and 60s, as the West began questioning traditional norms and seeking alternative ways of thinking, Watts became a bridge between cultures. He taught that the universe isn't something outside of us, we're part of it. And instead of trying to dominate life through logic and control, we should learn to flow with it, like a river. One of his central ideas was that the more we try to control life, the more anxious and disconnected we become. He often used analogies like trying to smooth rough water with an iron, showing how effort can actually create resistance. Watts didn't just lecture, he told stories, played with paradox, and used humor to wake people up to the absurdity of overthinking everything. He passed away in 1973, but his lectures continue to inspire millions online. His message? That life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced, especially when we stop trying so hard to figure it all out. Overthinking has become the silent epidemic of our time. In a world flooded with choices, information, and pressure to get it right, our minds have turned into battlegrounds of constant analysis. We overthink relationships, careers, text messages, even our emotions. We replay the past and rehearse the future over and over, until we're mentally exhausted but no closer to clarity. Psychologists define overthinking as excessive rumination, looping thoughts that don't lead to resolution. Studies show that chronic overthinkers are more prone to anxiety, depression, insomnia, and even decision paralysis. In fact, one study from the University of Michigan found that overthinking not only worsens mood, but actually shrinks our problem-solving ability. We live in a culture that worships thinking. We're told to plan, analyze, optimize constantly. But at what cost? Alan Watts saw this coming long before smartphones and social media. He observed that Western culture had become obsessed with the intellect, with controlling outcomes, and with separating the mind from the body and the present moment. He once said, A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So, he loses touch with reality. That's the heart of the problem. Overthinking disconnects us from reality, from intuition, from presence. We're so caught up in our heads that we miss what's actually happening around us. Watts believed that this disconnection creates a kind of spiritual anxiety, a feeling that life is something we have to conquer rather than something we can dance with. And in trying to think our way to peace, we end up creating the very tension we're trying to escape. So the question becomes, what happens when we stop thinking so much? Let's explore. One of Alan Watts's most powerful insights was this: the more you try to control life, the more out of control it feels. It's a paradox. We're taught that success, happiness, even peace, come from effort and planning, so we grip tighter, overanalyze every move, force clarity, and try to micromanage the future. But instead of creating calm, we create tension. Watts compared this to trying to smooth out water with a flat iron. The harder you press, the rougher the surface becomes. But if you let the water settle on its own, it becomes clear and still. He wasn't against effort, he was against forcing. There's a crucial difference. When we overthink or overcontrol, we shift into fear of failure, uncertainty, judgment. We act not from inspiration, but from resistance. Ironically, the very act of trying to guarantee the perfect outcome often blocks the outcome. Watts often drew from Taoist wisdom, especially the concept of Wu Wei, which means effortless action or non-forcing. It's the idea that flow happens when we stop resisting reality and start cooperating with it. Think of a surfer riding a wave. They're fully engaged but not in control. They're aligned with the rhythm of the ocean, not battling it. In daily life, this looks like releasing the need to know exactly how things will work out, and trusting that life often organizes itself better than our plans ever could. So, the next time you're mentally wrestling with a decision or forcing an answer, ask yourself, am I riding the wave or trying to control the ocean? Because sometimes, clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from letting go. Letting go is one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot, often misunderstood as giving up, not caring, or becoming passive. But Alan Watts had a much deeper, more nuanced view. To him, letting go didn't mean abandoning responsibility. It meant releasing the illusion of control. In Western culture, we're conditioned to believe that if we don't tightly manage everything, our emotions, outcomes, relationships, things will fall apart. But Watts argued the opposite. The tighter we grip, the more we suffer. Letting go means loosening that grip and trusting the natural intelligence of life. This idea is deeply rooted in Eastern philosophy. In Taoism, for example, there's a principle called Wu Wei, which translates to non-doing or effortless action. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in alignment with the flow of life rather than against it. Imagine holding a bar of soap. The harder you squeeze, the more likely it is to slip out of your hand. But with a gentle hold, it stays right where it's supposed to be. Letting go means shifting from control to cooperation, from force to flow. It's not about apathy, it's about presence. It's choosing to trust the process rather than overthink every step of the journey. In practical terms, this might look like making a decision without needing to know the perfect outcome, allowing emotions to rise and fall without judging or suppressing them, taking action, then releasing attachment to how it unfolds. Watts believed that when you let go not of life but of your need to control it, you stop resisting reality. And in that space, life begins to align naturally. So letting go isn't giving up, it's giving in to the deeper rhythm of life. One of Alan Watts' most radical ideas was this: you are not just your thoughts. In fact, Watts argued that the modern mind suffers because it mistakes itself for its thinking. We've come to identify so strongly with the voice in our heads, the planning, judging, narrating voice, that we forget it's only one part of our total experience. He once said, "We seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own, for we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society." That's a powerful reminder. The thoughts we obsess over, our doubts, fears, and over-analyses, are often just recycled patterns we absorbed unconsciously. Yet we treat them as truth and let them dictate how we feel, act, and live. Watts taught that behind all that mental noise, there's a deeper self, a quiet observer that's aware of thought, but not bound by it. You are not the thinker, you are the awareness in which thinking happens. And when you realize that, something shifts. You stop trying to solve life with your mind alone. You allow yourself to feel, to be, to act from presence, rather than over-analysis. This perspective is echoed in mindfulness practices and even neuroscience, which shows that the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for constant self-referential thought, tends to quiet during moments of deep awareness or meditation. So, when overthinking takes over, remember this: you don't have to believe every thought you think. You can witness them. And in that witnessing, they start to loosen their grip. You are not just a thinker, you are so much more. If this shift resonates with you, consider subscribing. We explore these ideas often, and they only get deeper from here. When Alan Watts said that life begins to align when we stop forcing it, he wasn't being mystical. He was describing something deeply practical. Letting go of overthinking creates a kind of space, mentally, emotionally, and even physically. And in that space, something powerful happens. Life starts to self-organize. Think of it like a ripple in water. When the surface is agitated by stress, fear, or obsessive thought, the ripple pattern is chaotic. But when the surface calms, clarity returns. Things reflect more clearly, and movement becomes more fluid. Watts often emphasized that you are not separate from the universe. You are part of its unfolding. When you stop trying to control everything, you're not giving up. You're realigning with something much bigger and more intelligent than your thinking mind. This isn't just philosophy. In real life, we see it all the time. When you stop obsessing over finding the perfect job, the right opportunity appears unexpectedly. When you stop trying to control someone in a relationship, deeper connection begins to grow. When you take a step back from a problem, solutions often come naturally, without force. Watts believed that life has a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes audible when we're quiet enough to hear it. Overthinking drowns it out. Letting go tunes us back in. This is the ripple effect. One small shift, like relaxing your grip on a situation, can lead to unexpected openings, clarity, and peace across many areas of life. So instead of asking, "How can I fix this?" try asking, what happens if I stop interfering? Because often it's not more effort that's needed, but less resistance. And in that letting go, things begin to fall into place, almost effortlessly. Alan Watts didn't believe in rigid self-improvement routines. Instead, he offered subtle shifts in awareness, simple ways of being that naturally reduce mental noise. Here are a few practices inspired by his teachings to help you stop overthinking and reconnect with presence. 1. Observe without judging. Instead of analyzing every thought, try simply watching them, like clouds passing through the sky. Watts emphasized that you are not your thoughts. You're the space in which thoughts arise. This perspective creates distance and loosens the grip of overthinking. 2. Do nothing on purpose. Watts often spoke of the value in just being. Try sitting in silence for 5 minutes with no goal, no journaling, no meditating, no planning, just awareness. Paradoxically, this non-doing helps the mind reset. 3. Listen to life like music. Watts said life is more like music than a journey, meant to be heard and enjoyed, not constantly analyzed. So practice presence by fully engaging with ordinary moments, the sound of rain, the taste of food, the rhythm of breath. 4. Let the answer come to you. Instead of chasing clarity, try stepping back. Take a walk, take a breath. Let go of solving and trust that the answer may emerge when you're not searching. These aren't hacks or quick fixes, they're invitations to live from a deeper awareness, where thinking becomes a tool, not a tyrant. And from that space, clarity often arises on its own. While Alan Watts's message of letting go resonates with many, it's often misunderstood. One common criticism is that letting go sounds like giving up, as if Watts was promoting laziness or passivity, but that's a misreading. He wasn't telling people to do nothing. He was inviting them to act from presence and alignment, not from fear and over-control. Another misunderstanding is that surrender means avoiding responsibility. In truth, Watts encouraged full engagement with life, but without the tension of needing to dominate or predict every outcome. His critics also argued that his ideas lacked structure, and it's true. Watts didn't offer a rigid roadmap, but that was intentional. He believed that life can't be systematized like a machine. It has to be experienced. So his challenge wasn't to stop living, but to live more freely, more lightly, and with a deep trust that life often works better when you stop trying so hard. So, what if the peace you're chasing isn't hiding in the next thought, but in the space between them? Alan Watts taught that when we stop overthinking, life doesn't fall apart. It begins to fall into place. Not because we've figured it all out, but because we've stopped standing in our own way. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what you can, and then releasing the need to control what comes next. It's trusting that life has its own intelligence, one that often works better than constant analysis. So, as you move forward, notice where you're holding on too tightly. Breathe, step back, let it unfold. Because sometimes the clearest answers come not from thinking more, but from allowing more. And as Alan Watts reminded us, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's okay to stop thinking for a while.